Or the December 1st North Plains Urban Renewal Agency meeting at 7:57. Lori, would you give us a roll call, please?
Well, thank you. Director Dumbrau.
Present.
Director Fage.
Here.
Director Hagedorn. Here. Director Papen. Present. Director Reddy.
Here.
Thank you, Lori. At this time, I will entertain a motion for approval of the special session agenda in the November 3rd board meeting minutes.
I will make a motion to approve November 3rd meeting minutes.
All right, it's been moved to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, approved. Oh, sorry. Motion by Councilor Papen, second by Councilor Hagedorn. All those in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, at this time we have public comment. I have Amanda Williams-Ivan, grant options. And just a reminder, commission cannot respond. You have 3 minutes, please state whether you're inside or outside the city, and time starts when you do.
Thank you. My name is Amanda Williams-Ivan, and I currently live inside of North Plains, 97133. And I am the current owner of the URA Fitness, which we had our open house over the weekend. And I'm here today because I would like North Plains to consider different grants to more businesses other than the just food services. We need businesses that can help stabilize and grow North Plains. My gym is an important part of the community, and I plan to make it an essential resource. I am actively working with local and state agencies to create and implement programs for North Plains seniors and veterans, providing them with free access to the gym to support their physical, mental, and social wellness. If current programs are not available, I plan to launch these programs by myself. I recently had to move the gym to a new location in North Plains due to necessary repairs being neglected at the previous site. Unfortunately, the moving expenses and building out the new space needed exceeded our initial budget. We are now also paying twice the rent, as we could not find a comparable space with similar pricing. While the unexpected costs were a challenge, I am pleased with the new location as it provides greater opportunities to serve our community. We are currently seeking a grant to help us cover the transition costs into the new space. We are hoping that you will consider assessing or assisting us so we can continue to help the community stay strong and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. And Lori, any others?
No others.
Perfect. Okay, so next I would like to welcome up Elaine Howard, Consultants.
Good evening. I'm Elaine Howard, and with me I have 2 women who help me on all of my projects, Allie Linko and Margaret Raymond. So they are mentoring a bit because they usually don't come to all the public meetings. So this was a great opportunity because it's close to home for them to come to a public meeting. So thank you for letting us do it. No, they're fine.
Okay. Oh, she said that.
So I'm Elaine Howard. I'm an urban renewal consultant. I've been doing consulting since 2005. I consult with probably about 80% of the urban renewal agencies across the state. So I know what is going on in most localities in urban renewal. If I don't know what the answer is, I usually know where to find it and can get back to you on that. Next slide. I just put this up because a lot of times the cities with whom I work will put these on their websites. And then I have people call me and say, oh, I showed my city council your presentation. And I go, So just, if this goes up on your website and this is there, maybe somebody will actually call me first before they show my presentation. So that's the only reason that is there. Next slide. So what is urban renewal? Urban renewal is a tool that is authorized through the Oregon Revised Statute, ORS 457. If you ever think you want to read that, you can just Google ORS 457. The first part of it is very understandable, and as you get further into it, it becomes very complex and maybe is great reading if you can't get to sleep at night. It will help you do that. It is generally used as an economic development tool throughout Oregon. It was initially set up as a tool to be used by housing authorities, so it has changed focus over the years. It is unique in that it is a financing tool. So a lot of times, smaller cities like you might have a downtown plan or a plan for industrial uses, but you don't have any money to implement that plan or to do those projects. Urban renewal has both those goals and objectives and projects identified, but it also has that financing tool that helps you to actually accomplish those projects. In Oregon, urban renewal is used to address what's called blighting situations. Blight is actually defined in the statute. There are 6 or 7 different instances of what blight is, and we'll cover those in a slide that's coming. And urban renewal functions on increases in property tax revenues in urban renewal areas. It's on increases that would happen with or without an urban renewal area. So it doesn't mean your property taxes increase as a result of urban renewal. It just means urban renewal gets a portion of those taxes that already increase. And we'll go through that more also. It's used all over Oregon. And the next slide shows us a map. You can see in the metropolitan area, there is big clusters of use of urban renewal. But you can also see up 101, most of the major cities have it. And as you go out the Columbia Gorge, most of the major cities have it. And even when you look down in Southern Oregon, most of the major cities are using urban renewal as an economic development tool and also as a tool to help with their downtown revitalizations. Next slide. So one of the things that is misconstrued often about urban renewal is that it is a new tax. It is easy to misconstrue that because when you get your property tax statement and you look at where your money goes to, there's a line item if you have urban renewal in your community that says urban renewal and it has a tax amount associated with it. And so if anybody's really looking at their tax bill and they see that, they will assume that that means they're paying an additional tax for urban renewal. In fact, that distribution or showing where that money goes to is something that the assessor has to do when they allocate the tax money that comes in, but it is not a new tax. So if urban renewal went away, that money gets reallocated to other taxing districts. So it wouldn't reduce your property tax bill. It would just go to other taxing districts, the city, the county, the school districts. Next slide. So when an urban renewal area is formed in a community, the assessor establishes what's called a frozen base assessed value. That's shown by the green bar across the bottom. That is the total assessed value of all of the personal, real, utility, and manufactured accounts within that urban renewal area. All of the taxes off of that continue going to all of the regular taxing jurisdictions. So at the time that it's established, that value, all of those taxing jurisdictions continue getting their money off of that. Next slide. In Oregon, property taxes go up really for only 2 reasons. The assessor is allowed to increase our assessed value by 3% every year. And typically, if you look at your property tax bill, it will go up by 3% every year. It may not have during the Great Recession, but otherwise, I'm sure if you look at it this year, all of your assessed values went up by 3%. The other reason an assessor may increase your assessed value is if you do any substantial improvements or new construction on your property. If you do either of those two things, the assessor is allowed to reevaluate what your assessed value of your property is. A lot of times people confuse assessed value and real market value because both of those things are shown on your property tax bill. And that real market value may go up more than that 3%. And you might look at that and panic and say, oh my gosh, they're really taxing me more than they used to. If you actually look at the amount you're paying, it will only have gone up by that 3%. Unless you have a lot of local option levies and bonds and within your community, I don't believe that you do. So that 3% is about what it will go up every year. Next slide. When an urban renewal area is formed within a city, and that's shown by the blue within that green, so the green is the entire city, the blue represents the urban renewal area. All of the increase in property tax assessed values, the taxes off of that, just that blue area will go, next slide, to the urban renewal agency. Oops, Jack. Look at the bottom and see if there's a little animation that you can click. Yes, you can click that. It will show a blue bar that shows that that money will go to the urban renewal agency to do projects and programs within the urban renewal area. Again, that's just for those properties within that. Don't worry about it. I'll just explain it. But just for those properties within that blue area. So the rest of your city, any increase in assessed value within that will continue going to all of the different taxing jurisdictions, including the city itself. Next slide. This slide was done by Ali of Tiberius Solutions. It shows this concept in a way that shows the growth of an area over that 3% that the assessor can naturally do to show you the value of urban renewal within your community. Because if you are able to invest in infrastructure projects or rehab loans or working with a developer, and those things cause new development to happen within your community, that assessed value will grow beyond that 3%. And that is what you will be able to use along with that 3% to do more projects and programs within an urban renewal area to cause that value to increase even more, so that at the end of urban renewal, you have additional assessed value that will go on the property tax rolls that all of the different taxing districts get to enjoy. So that 3% in the orange is shown by the hash mark on the orange. And then that orange bar is projected additional growth because you're able to do projects and programs with that tax increment revenue. Next slide. Actually, Scott, who used to work for me, did a presentation at the League of Oregon Cities on urban renewal, and afterwards the city councilor came up and asked him, couldn't we just establish our own little area that we decide to set aside funding for and not have an impact on all of the other taxing districts? And the answer is, well, yes, you could decide to do that. But what urban renewal does is leverage the amount of taxes that your citizens pay and what percentage, and your city manager was going over that earlier, what percentage of the overall property tax bill that is. So you can see here that the city of North Plains is one of those blue areas. So it's only a percentage of the entire amount of property taxes that are paid in your community. If you have an urban renewal area, you get that whole 100% of the property tax bill off of that increased assessed value, instead of just that amount that is equal to what your permanent rate levy amount is. So you're able to leverage your money with all of the rest of that property tax bill. Next slide. I do this for a couple of reasons. One, to show the process that the assessor has to go through to determine how much money goes to an urban renewal agency every year, but also to help understand why urban renewal is on your property tax bill, because that's always one of those questions that I get. So this just takes a property value at 100,000 because that's easy to multiply 2, 3, 4 times, whatever that is. Shows what your property tax rate is, and then says what amount that rate would gain off of $100,000 house. So if your property tax rate is 15.38, and it was not in an urban renewal area, that house would pay $1,151.64 in property taxes. Next slide. If that went into an urban, the next year, that property increases by 3%, so it goes to 103,000. And you can see that every taxing jurisdiction gets a little bit more, 3% more into their amount, so that the total amount that is paid is $1,186, a 3% increase over the other. Next slide, please. And this shows if that went into an urban renewal area, and this was the very first year, the assessor would say, well, the frozen base was at 100,000. This $3,000 increase, the taxes off of that gets to go to urban renewal. In this case, the taxes off of that is $34.55. So of course, a really small amount on that 3%, but that goes to urban renewal, and you can see the amount that goes to all the other property taxing districts is the same as that 100,000 amount. So they don't get that increase, urban renewal gets that increase. The assessor has to do that for every property within the urban renewal area, add up that total amount, and then distribute that to every property within the city. So not just within the urban renewal area. That is because of measures 47 and 50 and the way that urban renewal had to be calculated due to those property tax limitation measures. So it is that then you total up the total amount and then you distribute that. And again, that doesn't increase the property taxes, it just divides where those taxes are going. Next slide. So why do cities decide to use urban renewal? Oftentimes there is a list of improvements that a city wants to do and they have no funding for that, and they see urban renewal as a potential funding source. Their general funds don't have any capacity to pay for storefront grants or main street improvements or developer incentives, and urban renewal can be used to pay for those capital improvements, capital projects, and it can be used as a funding source to bridge the gap for a developer trying to do a new project and isn't able to economically make that project work. Urban renewal can be used to financially make that project actually work. Urban renewal is also a great funding source to leverage with other funds. So if you are going for a statewide grant or a federal grant, they often will ask you, well, what are you using as a match? Or what do you already have committed to this project? And urban renewal is a good source to be able to commit to go for those other funding sources. Next slide. So we talked about blight way at the beginning. Blight is a precondition in Oregon to any urban renewal area. It specifically covers underdevelopment or underutilization of property. So if you have vacant properties or properties that maybe have only a portion of it developed, or the building that's on it is in really poor condition or needs substantial rehabilitation. So poor condition of buildings, and then inadequacy of infrastructure, including streets and utilities. So a lot of times we'll have a mix of those kinds of projects. So there'll be street improvement projects, there'll be sidewalk projects, there'll be signage, there'll be storefront loan programs, or development of property. Those are typical urban renewal kinds of activities. Next slide. And that urban renewal area then functions off of that income source, which is the money off of the increased assessed value within the area. It has its expenses. Those expenses are any expenditures on project programs and administration, and you can charge for administration of the urban renewal plan, but it also has a spending limit, and that is unlike anything that you have with the city. So the spending limit in urban renewal is called maximum indebtedness. And that is the total amount of money that you may spend on projects, programs, and administration over the life of an urban renewal plan. Most urban renewal plans do not have a duration clause, yours does. So your spending limit at this point with your existing plan is also accompanied with a duration provision that says how long your plan may last. Next slide. And we'll come to what that is in a minute. Let's go ahead and skip this because we talked about that on the chart about how the assessor calculates how much money goes to the taxing districts. And then finally, just to make sure everybody understands that urban renewal is not new money. It's money that comes from your other taxing districts. So it is important to coordinate with them. It's important for them to know how you're spending your money. It's important to spend the money wisely so that it accomplishes those goals within your plan. They will continue receiving money off of that frozen base, but they don't get any money off that area, that increased value for the full length of your urban renewal plan. That's great if you're doing great things within your urban renewal area. If you're not doing anything or you're spending the money on things that don't increase assessed value, all of your money on that, it doesn't really help out those other taxing districts at all. There is a concept in urban renewal that is a growth in an area may not have occurred but for urban renewal. So a lot of times we'll see growth in urban renewal areas, and that happens because you were able to do projects, maybe put in the infrastructure that allowed for new development to occur, or put money to a building that brought in new jobs and increased assessed value. Next slide. School districts are not impacted by urban renewal, or we say they're indirectly impacted. Next slide. And that is because regular taxing jurisdictions have a direct impact from urban renewal. They get less money. Next slide. This is how the state school funding formula works. This was done a number of years ago, but the funding formula is pretty much the same. And you can see that urban renewal is shown as local property tax revenues by the green at the top. Those local property tax revenues go into the state school fund, which is shown kind of lower on the middle. There are other funding sources for that state school fund. The legislature establishes a per pupil funding amount when they meet, and they allocate funds to that state school fund to equal that per pupil amount that they have to have for every school district within the state. So urban renewal in Pendleton or Brookings or Portland or North Plains all impacts that state school fund, and the legislature backfills for those impacts to be able to reach those per pupil targets. That is the same for education service districts. The community colleges have a similar backfill formula. It's called the Community College Fund. It's a little different. It's based on classes that are taken instead of number of students. Next slide. There are limitations in Oregon on urban renewal. So for your community, a population of under 50,000, you may have up to 25% of your assessed value of property in the city in an urban renewal area. And you may have up to 25% of your acreage. Those limitations, interestingly, were put in because a long time ago, the city of Lincoln City decided to put all their property in an urban renewal area. And they were challenged, and the legislature came back and put these limitations on and said, hey, guys, you can't really take all of the increases in property tax revenues and take them away. Once you have an urban renewal plan, you may not increase it by more than 20% of the original plan acreage. That's a hard and fast rule, and there is no way to get around that rule. Some of the other rules in the statute have ways where you can get concurrence to change that, not the acreage limitation. So if you have a plan area of 100 acres, you may add property to that plan area, but you may never exceed 120 acres because 20 acres is 20%. Even if you take acreage out, It's not fungible. You can't take acreage out and then backfill that acreage and still get your 20%. It's whatever that original acreage is, you may add only that amount. And there's no way to get around that provision. You may form a new urban renewal area, but that one plan can't be changed. You have a question?
Yes. We have a time limit on our urban renewal, so does that mean we get to reset the limits after the time limit expires?
I'm coming to your specific plan in like 2 slides.
Right on.
And we'll get to that, okay? Maximum indebtedness, that limit on your spending, it may only be increased by 20% as indexed by inflation annually. So you take your existing maximum indebtedness, you increase it by whatever inflation rate was used when you adopted the plan, and then you take 20% of that. The city council can do that on their own. If you want to increase it over that amount, you have to get concurrence from property taxing districts that equal 75% of the permanent rate levy. So that is usually the county, fire district, school district, city, kind of make up that amount. If you do any increase to the maximum indebtedness, it is called a substantial amendment, which means you have to go through the entire process, and same with increasing your acreage over 1%, you have to go through the entire process of the documents that you established to originally form your urban renewal area. So it's not done lightly. It takes time. There's a specific process and specific documents that have to be prepared for that process. Next slide. And that is the process of a substantial amendment. So you have to allow for public input at every stage. Your agency reviews a potential amendment. It goes to the county for a presentation. The planning commission has to review it for conformance to your comprehensive plan. And then you have to have a city council hearing on a non-emergency ordinance. That hearing has to be noticed to either all utility customers, voters, or residents. So it's a fairly big process. Next slide. These are the limitations of what an urban renewal area can do. So those are specified within the statute. These are the things that you are allowed to commence within your urban renewal area. You can see that number A is work of a housing authority, and that is because originally that's what urban renewal did. But you can also see that it allows for all of those things that I've been talking about of what other urban renewal plans do, and your plan allows many of those things also. We'll get to that. Next slide. In 2019, there were changes to the statute, 2 of which are important to understand. Any plan, any urban renewal plan that is substantially amended, and that is only the increase of acreage over 1% and increase in the maximum indebtedness after 2019, becomes what's called a permanent rate plan. That means you get division of taxes only on the overlapping taxing districts' permanent rate levies. No local option levies, no bonds, just those permanent rate levies. I believe your plan only gets permanent rate levies now anyway, because there are not bonds and there are not local option levies. So that's fine. However, if your school district passed a bond now, before you did any amendment, you would get a portion of those proceeds through urban renewal. And then public buildings were defined in 2019 because the taxing districts were not pleased with some of the expenditures of urban renewal funds on public buildings. They did not want urban renewal agencies building their own city halls because it's their money, and it doesn't do anything to increase the property tax base. So they said, well, why should you be spending our money to build your city hall? So they made that something you could still do, but only if you get concurrence of 3 of the top 4 impacted taxing jurisdictions to do that. So public art is also called a public building, certain kinds of public art. So the statute specifically defines what those public buildings are. Next slide. This is your area. So what now all that we'll be talking about is your urban renewal area. So both the area shown in the orange is within your urban renewal area. And I don't know if while we're on this, you want to ask any questions about that. I don't know the area that well, so Bill would need to reply to any questions on the boundary if there were any.
My question would be, can we, you already touched upon this. But is it as 20% net? Can I just take off, say for example, not that I wanted, but one of those orange sections, delete it, or and give that square footage or square acreage and apply it somewhere else.
No,
Once it's there, it's there. And
No.
it's healed, then you have a smaller UGB, right? I mean, not UGB, URA.
yeah. You're not allowed to do that under the 20. You can get rid of that acreage. It doesn't buy you anything.
Right. So there's
It
no
doesn't,
fancy-
it doesn't allow you to backfill that acreage to add more to that
to shift
20%.
it around, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so it's not 20% net, it's 20%
yeah,
there.
correct. And that was done because the taxing jurisdictions did not want an urban renewal area just moving all around the city, right?
Great,
Yeah,
that's-
we have it here and let's move it here, and well, now let's move it over here. And so it's saying, okay, guys, you get 20% and that's it. Next slide. Your maximum indebtedness is $17,112,306. I do not know why they went to dollars. At least they didn't put cents on it. So it is very specific. We will be working with Bill, I believe, to calculate how much of that you have used and how much you have remaining. Next slide. You have a duration provision within your plan. Your duration provision says that no projects may be commenced and no new indebtedness may be incurred after the 20th anniversary of the plan. And your plan adoption date was July 17th, 2006. So at July 17th of 2026, you may not start any new projects and you may not incur any new indebtedness. You may continue tax increment collections only to retire debt. So if you've taken out debt and you have payments to make, you still get to pay off that debt.
So why would somebody do that? I'm just trying to understand. It doesn't make sense to me, but I'm sure there's a reason.
We were talking about that on the way out. There are a couple of reasons why that happens. Sometimes it happens because one of the taxing jurisdictions, who maybe was on a committee at the beginning when you were negotiating all this, said, okay, if you're going to do urban renewal, I don't want it longer than 20 years. That's long enough for us to forego our money. I don't know. Jeff Cashman did this plan. I started doing some work with Jeff the year after he did this one. I don't know what the issue was here. So sometimes it's the taxing district. Sometimes it's the city council itself who says, you know what, 20 years is enough, because it's the city itself who foregoes money too. Sometimes it is political influence from citizens. So people who come and say, we support what you're doing, but we don't support that it goes longer than this. I don't know in your particular plan what it was, but those are usually the three reasons why that exists. I went over this with Bill and your attorney, because I've had this in other localities. And this provision can actually be amended out of your plan through a minor amendment by the agency. That minor amendment would be adopted by resolution of the agency. So you all can make that decision if you want to change that provision in the plan. So legally, you can do it, whether you want to do it or not is up to you. Next slide. This is your budget for 25, 26, I believe. So your projected revenues, total revenues are 2.3 million, and of that, property taxes about 1.65 million, and then delinquent taxes, so taxes people didn't pay the year before and they get paid, and so they come in the next year about 8,000. You have planned expenditures of about 3.7 million, and you have an unappropriated ending fund balance of 795,000. So you have a beginning balance, obviously, to be able to make all of that happen. And on your expenditures, that may include a contingency. I don't remember off the top of my head what that budget has.
I believe it's a 50,000 contingency. I would double check that, so slightly grain of salt.
Yeah. Next slide. So the amendments that are in your plan are 3 levels of amendments. There are minor amendments, and that may be done by a resolution by the agency. Council approved amendments, and those are material changes to goals and objectives or addition or expansion of projects. So when we talked over the duration provision with the attorney, we didn't feel it fit either of those 2 bullet points. There was something different. And then substantial amendments equal those that are required within the statute. Those are just those that are the over 1% addition of acreage and increasing the maximum indebtedness. Many new plans many of the plans that I write only have 2 levels of amendments if the city council is indeed the agency itself. Because being the city council who serves at the agency and then saying, well, but the city council has to approve it and you're in the exact same body, to me doesn't make a lot of sense to make it be heard by a different body if it's the same body who's doing it. A lot of times, not a lot of times, sometimes the agency is comprised of people in addition to city council. And that is why that council approved amendment was initially put in urban renewal plans, because sometimes there were planning commission members or sometimes business people, sometimes a representative of the fire district or of the county. So that is why those council approved amendments were originally put in urban renewal plans. In the ones that I've written in the last 15 years, I only put that provision in if the agency is a separate body from the city council. Next slide. So this is information from your budget. Completed projects, purchase of a 5-acre Glencoe Opportunity Area property and environmental due diligence that will lead to partnership with developer for future commercial center and tenant improvement grant or loan program. And then future projects, potentially minor amendment to extend sunset date, substantial amendment to update the plan projects and consider boundary amendments. That would only be a substantial amendment if you increase the boundary. If you just looked at the plans and the projects, you can do that through either a council approved amendment if you meet those thresholds, or agency amendment. To look at downtown improvement plan projects, to look at the Glencoe Opportunity Area development process, and to further small business programs. Next slide. So questions on any of that or anything you're thinking about or anything else?
Councilor Pittman, this might be a question for Bill, but can you elaborate what percentage of the city or the URA is currently in the district? Are we approaching the 20% threshold?
Oh, well, the district hasn't changed in size since its inception. So it's still a 25% geographic limit on the city geography, correct? So right now, if we were to do a brand new urban renewal plan and consider a district that looks like what we already have, the city's over double, not quite triple geographically in size. So it's probably currently 15 to 20%. Yeah,
We can look that up, that information, I don't have, but it would be in the report that accompanied the original plan adoption in 2005. So we can look that up for you and get that back to you.
Commissioners? Commissioner today, sorry, Commissioner Deborah, so what restrictions other than those, so like when you said public buildings, essentially from what I'm hearing is it needs to raise the value of it needs to raise the assessed value in the future on the building. And it can't be IPU zone, it can't be institutional public, correct?
It's really interesting because the statute left some things. I was part of those negotiations. And, you know, whenever you're negotiating, you say, well, what about this? Because in Astoria, we had built a football stadium with urban renewal funds. And the taxing district said, okay, sports fields won't be public buildings. We think that's okay. So, and for an example, I'm working with banks right now, and they're wanting to put a performing arts center to use some of their urban renewal money to, in the future, fund a performing arts center. And when you look at the statute, that's okay. A community center is not. A recreation center is. So if you have an idea, we have to look at the statute and try to ferret out what the intent, you know, what they put in and what they didn't. But mostly what they were going after were city halls, police stations, fire stations, libraries, and public art.
Thank you. I didn't have a specific, I'm just trying to understand, because I just met with planning commission. He made it worse. Anybody else? Council or Commissioner?
Commissioner Page. So we've been doing a lot of stuff for helping out small businesses get started. I'm assuming that's going to help the assessed value by putting in capital equipment. That's how that would fall. Because it's not on the outside of it or the frontage of it. It's the internal buildings.
So the assessor does assess equipment. And if it's within the urban renewal area, the assessor will assess that equipment. I believe equipment also gets depreciated. So it's not a continual uptick on any equipment that's put in. But to me, that's one of the most important things you can do in an urban renewal area, because you're providing places for people to go in your community, you're providing services, you're helping to keep a lively area and maybe encourage other development because people are downtown. So even though it might not increase directly your assessed value because of that particular property, it should encourage other kinds of development to occur.
So we have tangent assessed value of that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Another question, Commissioner Deborah. So to the public comment earlier, because currently we have food services is the primary. So to change that, that's just a program. That the amendment's separate from just changing the programs, or do we need to do that as part of the amendment?
I have not looked at that particular provision of how you're allocating funds. I think it would be easy for you to change that through a minor amendment to your plan, because you're not allocating huge amounts of money to any individual business. So whatever it is, you probably can just change that through a minor amendment to your plan.
Thanks.
So one more thing, Commissioner Pager. Commissioner Peppin and City Manager Bill, City Manager Reed, talked about how much of our current land use is being used as valued about maybe 20%, maybe 15%, because our city has grown since that last part. But my understanding is once it's set, even the city grows, is still set at that? Or is it, or is that 20% or 25% still expandable?
As your acreage grows, your 25% is on whatever the acreage of your city is.
And
So,
you can add new things to it, or is that just, cause you had the orange being moved around? That can't be moved around, but can we add new spots elsewhere?
yes,
Yeah.
you could form a new urban renewal area elsewhere. What happens when you form a new area is you're back at the beginning where you're only getting that 3% increase of money. So the amount that you get every year is really small.
Or we targeting where it is.
But it grows. I mean, the urban renewal is a long-term financing commitment. So it grows, the 3% compounds every year as it goes up.
And that be like a major, are there a substantial amendment for that?
It wouldn't be an amendment, it would be forming a brand new urban renewal area. So that process that I went through and I said, if you do a substantial amendment, you have to go through these steps.
But it wouldn't be amendment, just starting to.
It'd be a new plan and it has to go through all those steps also. And typically on a new plan, you would also get public input. So on an amendment, sometimes you don't need as much public amendment depending on how big the amendment is. But starting a new plan, a lot of times cities will include a component of working with the public and finding out what they want and getting input from other taxing districts to make sure that your plan is successful and not opposed.
Any other questions, comments? All right. Bill, I'm gonna say this is super helpful. Thank you, first of all, and Bill, back to you.
Thank you. Elaine, while you're here, I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit, regarding the city's need to remove the sunset date clause. Ultimately, it sounds like it needs to go before the URA board as a resolution to consider. But as far as a consultant going through the process that leads to that, given that, well, I'm gonna tee it up a little bit, but given that this plan has been around since 2006, 2007, and a lot of laws have changed, you know, we have some taxing districts here that are particularly, you know, hawks about urban renewal. What kind of a process would you see being the best way to go about doing that ends up in a resolution? Like what should go into the process to you?
Okay, you asked the question, so the first thing I would do if I were you is try to go back to 2005 and figure out why that duration provision was put in. Who requested it? Was the fire district? Was it political? That would be my first question. And whatever the answer of that is would drive how I would change it. If it was the fire district, then I call up the fire district and sit down with them and say, hey, we put this provision in, we can get it out. Let's talk about that and get your reaction and see what we can do as partners. I think the last thing you want to do, if it was another taxing district and you made an agreement with them, is to go back on an agreement without talking to them about it first. So that's number one. Number two is if you're not extending or increasing your maximum indebtedness, that the actual impact to them doesn't change. It's the same impact. You have the same maximum indebtedness. They just haven't experienced that impact because the area hasn't grown as much as the projections were that it would grow. So that information will feed into how, I don't know how much maximum indebtedness you have left. So figuring that out and looking at your original projections were that by the end of next July, you will have spent all of that amount, and I don't think you have. So, um, I think that figures into those discussions with the taxing districts, if it was them. And I think you do talk to the taxing districts anyway and just say, this is what we're doing and this is why. We still have projects to do. We still need improvements in our community. The amount of impact to you hasn't changed. It's just gone on longer, but been a shorter amount each year. And let them know. That would be what I would recommend. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have no idea what was happening in 2006. I was only like 4. But, I'm thinking that 2006, the economy was growing at a fantastic rate. So they wanted to not lock us in at a certain amount. They wanted us to reassess in 20 years, maybe they have $4 billion to spend. Who knows what they were thinking, right? So I'm thinking it was hot and heavy, and they probably were very excited about the growth, and then they realized.
And I think some of that property that is that's not developed, I think there might have been development plans for that property. There may be a developer who was looking at some of that property, and so they were assuming that that would develop and
Yeah.
use those projections. A lot of times that's the factor that makes it so that when I look at the urban renewal plan and it's way below projections, and I go back and look at the original projections, it's because somebody, for example, in Bankson, they won't mind me using this, we're behind what we thought we would be, and that's because the development on the west side of Banks, that housing development, was supposed to start about 5 years ago. Well, it didn't, and so we're 5 years behind, which means it's going to take longer than what we had projected. That happens in the economy sometimes. It's not something you as a consultant can control when you're writing the plan, or a city council can control it. It just happens.
Anything else? Okay. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
One last question. This is Commissioner Papen. I was just thinking, and I apologize if I didn't capture this in my notes, but, let's say hypothetically, we extend the sunset date and later on we add a new URA. Is there a time frame in which we can add a new district, or can that happen at any time?
Okay. First of all, urban renewal is very complicated, so never apologize about asking a question. So that is totally okay. You may add add a new urban renewal area at any time, as long as you stay under those 25% requirements.
Okay, and I'm also gonna tee it up for you. So my other question is, right now, as a community, we are discussing a potential of maybe growing the community, and it's very up in the air. There is no right or wrong answer to this. But would it be wise to pause, potentially even entertaining the idea of adding a new URA if we know that there could be growth or an expansion of the boundary in the next 20 years? That way we can maximize how much of the URA percentage we can use.
You can, if your boundary grows, let's say your boundary grows by 100 acres, your city boundary, you'll get 25 acres additional capacity just by your boundary growing. So whenever you annex new property, you get 25% of that you can add to what you can put into urban renewal.
So what I'm hearing is we could do it at any time, but then would that trigger that additional process? I know it was a few slides back, but that additional process of, having to go back through and get approval to expand the URA.
So for your existing area, you may add boundary, but anything over 1%, you have to go through that big process. No matter how much capacity you have in your city. no matter how many acres or what percentage you are of the total. So there's percentage thresholds for different things. There's the threshold for percent of total city acreage. And as your city acreage grows, that 25% keeps getting applied to whatever your total city acreage is. But for your existing area, you can only add 20%. Anything over 1% requires that bid process.
Thank you.
And those get confused often also.
And I think that's probably, Commissioner Page, I think that's probably why they put that 20-year thing in there. That's the only reason why they injure themselves. Is to have that 20 years, let's not just do a piecemeal, a little piece here. 20 years, you have a big old swath, you can figure out, okay, now where do we need it, right? And you do it all at once. So that's probably why they have that 20% in there. I don't think it's the fire department or anybody else. I think it's just them trying to be cautious.
Yeah. One of the things that we've been doing with taxing districts in the last, I don't know, 10 plus years is, if they want a duration provision, you don't have to do a duration provision. What we've taught them into doing sometimes instead of putting in a duration provision is an analysis of the plan at year 10, year 15, year 20, to say, where are we in our plan? How much of our maximum indebtedness have we used? How much longer will it take us? So that they gain more information about what you're doing and how long it will last for them.
Yeah, that seems very, very prudent, doing every 10-year assessment. Because as you said, that golf course, reaching houses took 5 years to do it.
Yeah.
Bryn Hill took 20, right? So 10 years, that
Right.
sounds like a better way to do it.
Councilor Ray. Or Commissioner.
To go off of Commissioner Papen's question, how much does a review cost over that 1%? If you have to go into a review.
So, I am phasing out of urban and Tiberius Solutions, for whom the two women work. I've been working with them for like the last 15 years on different projects. And so they're going to start picking up more parts. And so we got a bid from them, just in case that question was asked tonight, of how much a substantial amendment would cost. And depending, if you just do the amendment without adding a bunch of public involvement, their scope of work cost estimate, which we haven't had time to review with Bill, is about $42,000. So it's not a little thing, it's a big thing.
But an important thing.
With public involvement, what would that cost?
It depends on what you want to do for the public involvement. If you want a committee and how many times you want the committee to work, to meet, or if you want to do, like in Banks on their amendment, we just did a survey to the community, and it's actually very efficient, and we got over 100 responses to it. So we thought that that was great and got a lot of public input through that. And that didn't cost us very much. We didn't do, if I'm doing a new plan, I usually do an advisory group that meets 3 or 4 times. So you have to prepare for that. And that can, cost anywhere between $8,000 and $10,000 to do all of that. Where if you're just doing a survey and compiling results on a survey, then it costs less. So it really depends on what level of public involvement you want and how you specify that.
Anybody else? Councilor or Commissioner?
I think I'm still confused on trying to figure out Commissioner Papen's question on holding off on doing a review, because it sounds, if we go through with the UGB, that's $42,000 to bring in that land.
And this is separate. Excuse me for interrupting. No, I could be wrong. This is separate from a UGB discussion. This is an amendment to, and so I could have answered you incorrectly. This is an amendment to the urban renewal plan discussion is the 42,000.
But if we expand the UGB by X acres, that now gives us that many more acres to bring into the URA.
So we could, at that point, we could bring in 25% of that. But the other would be a whole separate amendment, a whole separate statement.
And the whole, the whole extra $42,000, because it's, no matter
Well,
what, that's over that
The
1%.
42,000 is for the amendment
That you
to
already
the current one. That would be a new urban renewal area. So it may or may not be 42,000.
And would it be paid for by the URA? It was come out of that fund, so when it comes out, so.
Do you want me to add? Please. So Councilor Papen, or Commissioner Papen, so I think what I'm hearing Commissioner Redding mention is, that $42,000 price is pretty steep. However, I think my intent of my original question was, where do we go from here? Do we add another agency, another URA now, or do we wait 5 years? Is really what I was trying to assess. And so maybe read between the lines for both of your responses. It sounds like, we can do that at any time. And, let's say tomorrow we decide to create a new URA. And then 10 years from now, we expand the UGB potentially. It would cost 42,000 approximately to amend this plan that we created tomorrow. Am I capturing that correctly? To amend it versus.
Well, if you amended it, we have the boundary restriction. So you can only add acreage of 20% of whatever your urban renewal area is. So, to me, I would think about if you have done everything you want to do within your downtown. If the answer is no, and you still would like to use the rest of that maximum indemnity authority, I would get rid of the duration clause. I would coordinate with the other taxing districts in doing that to make sure they understand you're doing it and why. And then at that point, you could say, okay, now we've gotten rid of the duration clause. We have some breathing room here. We don't have to decide everything by July of next year. Then we can decide, what do we really want to do? Sometimes I've worked with, and I'm sure Bill has the capacity to do this too, but I've facilitated meetings where we say, okay, what do we really want to do in our community? Do we want to do it in this urban renewal area? Are these the projects that we want to do? Do we want to expand it? We know we have a 20% limitation. Do we have the acreage to expand it here? Is the area where we want to expand within that 20% or not? And see whether the existing area still works for you or not. If it doesn't still work, then you just go ahead and do what you're doing here, but then you consider maybe a new urban renewal area for the future. And that discussion, I think, will lie upon what projects is it that you want to do? Where do you want to do those? Do you really want to wait to do those until you expand your urban growth boundary so that you put it all together? Or do you have capacity to form more than one area? One of the key things is making sure that your own city budget stays healthy, because whatever you put into urban renewal, the growth on that you can't use for your regular city services anymore. So yes, you're leveraging your money and able to do capital improvements, which is great, but you can't use that money for just your regular city services.
So I think the challenge is, even if we were to do UGB expansion tomorrow, we wouldn't see commercial industrial going out for probably 5 years or more, at which point we're sitting on 5 years of no URA, and we're not doing improvements in GOA downtown, which is something we need to get done. So my suggestion would be, based on that, is we probably need to do this. And yes, that will be an expense and that will be part of the conversation if we do UGB expansion, because that would need to be factored in that we will probably need a second URA in wherever we go for the commercial and industrial areas to do expansion.
Um. Chair Dumbrell, thank you. Correct, based on what I would understand. One thing I would like to touch on that Elaine brought up, and that is that the URA budget that you all adopted for the 25-27 biennium has an intentionally ample professional services budget in it. And it was put together in part amply, assuming you all would want the capacity to be able to, if you did a big substantial amendment with a lot of public outreach, that's expensive. And so we budgeted for the top end of that. If this amendment process ends up being not quite as involved, that means that we're even more assured of budget for things like facilitated decision-making on this. So I would just keep in mind that there's budget to take certain steps and to make good decisions based on facilitated discussion. So we can do that.
Yeah, and I would just say my main concern is if we don't do this, we don't have a URA. Like if we don't do anything, it sunsets and then we don't have it. So we still have two areas that with comprehensive, or I don't know, comprehensive plans, whatever we're calling it, for GOA and downtown, the improvement plan. Sorry, that's what I was trying to say. So we do need to continue to work on those. So that would be my suggestion, is that we consider that. And then in the event that we do a UGB expansion, that would be a part of that UGB expansion budget at that time.
I would like to suggest that we as a body ask Bill to do some research on that 2006, what happened in 2005, to figure it out. Figure out all of our, if we can't trace it down, then figure out our partners and talk to them about it. Hey, you wanna do this? We can't figure out the person that, or whatever agency suggested it. We just ask all of them, hey, we wanna do this in line with everybody else. Do you have a problem with that? Yes or no? And once we have that, we can move forward to move the date.
Anybody, do I have consensus? Everybody on board with this? Okay, we have consensus. So yes, please, Bill. Anything else? Elaine, thank you so much. Always informative. I actually got to see you at bank, so I cheated, but
Oh, good.
it was a lot of fun. I do appreciate all the help and the great questions that we have, because this is definitely a lot. All right. So next and final on the agenda is we have a special assistance grant for Downtown Gateway. Hopefully you've all read Bill's staff report on this. And this is, just to be clear, this is a one-time deal that we're doing, or that Bill's recommending as the executive director of the URA, for sisters and stuff. And Bill, I'll turn it over to you for your report. Yes.
Yeah, great. No, I would be happy to. Rowan, if you would like to come up for any, to be a resource on anything, if anybody asks some more specific questions, that's great. Sorry, my computer's faded. Okay. Before you is ultimately what we're looking for as staff, or from you, the board tonight, is consensus approval for us to move forward with awarding a up to $50,000 grant to Sisters and Stuff LLC, represented by Kathy Bishop, who I believe is in the audience. Neither was. She might have gotten tired. It's kind of, we're getting later, but there she is. And so, as has been said tonight before, the city doesn't have a specific program for awarding grants to businesses for their property improvement needs beyond a new food service, a new sit-down food service tenant improvement program. And even then, that program is grants to help with extraordinary costs. It's not, any and all costs potentially to qualify. It's those costs that even the landlord trying to be generous couldn't help you with as a new restaurant. And so there's really an extraordinary nature to the types of costs that the existing grant program has. And so given that we don't have a grant program for that, Kathy came before City Council and asked about the idea of a grant potentially, mentioning that she had extraordinary costs cleaning up and getting the property ready for her consignment business to go in there. And so that's why we're here for consensus tonight, is to get your approval based on how we've put together a proposed grant for Sisters and Stuff. And really, what it's based on is without an existing program to go by to kind of give you a checkbox, and we went through everything, and she qualifies for all these different things in detail, and you can have the assurance that the URA money meets the guidelines to be spent this way. What we want to do is to recognize that the Sisters and Stuff property at the northeast corner of 311th and Commercial Street is the gateway property into downtown. If you come into town from the east, headed west, if you come in on West Union or from the freeway into Glencoe and into downtown on Commercial, prior to Kathy buying that property, and I don't know how she ever could have sufficiently budgeted for what it looked like before, but it was very, very much a terrible mess. It was prior a vehicle repair shop. At one point, they added apparently a U-Haul rental business. And the property was increasingly a very serious nuisance. Cars, car parts, torn up soil. I mean, it was cars all over behind the building, right near the railroad. I mean, it was not the most attractive by far gateway into downtown. And not only just downtown, but you're coming into town, you're going to the Garlic Festival, and you come into town on Commercial and you turn right to go to Jesse Mae's, you see two sides of that ugliness. And so Kathy cleaned it all up. Very nice. In the grant proposal, there are before and after photos. So the bottom line here is that if we apply a similar, it's a property in the downtown area. The tenant improvement grant program for new food service provides a matching grant in downtown of 60% of costs taken on by the business. And in this case, Kathy spent over almost $149,000 on cleanup of repair to the building and cleanup outside the building to make it a very nice, presentable, functional commercial space and property. And not only that, to better accommodate pedestrians, better accommodate bicycle parking. It's just a lot of great improvements have been put in place. And so 60% match is well over $50,000. So that's why we're saying a grant of up to 50 to be consistent with precedent for how we've granted money on that sort of thing. But that's what we're proposing to you is a grant of up to $50,000 for all the extraordinary cost of beautification and repair at the gateway to our downtown.
Commissioner Page. So looking at the itemized list here, there's a lot of work to be done. The place was called as blight, in my opinion, but need to be a custodian of this money that's not ours. We're spending from somebody else. I'm hoping you got a discounted rate on the building when you bought it due to the extra repairs, or at least you baked that into the final sale price. That being said, for the exterior itself, the parts that we look at, it comes out to $148,876, which is 33.5% of the cost is $50,000, which would be the $50,000 grant. So I'm proposing we give you the maximum amount of $50,000 to help offset that cost that helps the external aesthetics, my goodness. I think that's appropriate. It's below the 40% threshold, it's 33.5. But hopefully you get a discounted price on the property, so. I move, I am gonna propose that we give you the full $50,000.
Thank you, Commissioner. Because we're spending money, I just want everybody to give a verbal yay or nay, just so I can, be clear. So, Commissioner Page, just to be clear, that was a yay. Commissioner Page,
Oh, yay.
Commissioner Lee,
Yay.
Commissioner, Hager.
Yay. Commissioner Pepen, yay.
And Commissioner Devereaux, yay. Does anybody have any further comment? Oh, yes, Commissioner.
Forgive me if I'm wrong, but are we also talking about helping the Rogue with some of their building improvements? And so my question is, if that is true, are we as a body supposed to direct you in coming up with another grant style for these types of situations?
Great question. You anticipated the process. Commissioner Papen, so, excuse me, Commissioner Redding. So in the case of the road, yes, they came to us, with costs and issues that they're dealing with their building. And after speaking with, we talked to them about it, and after speaking with them, I think in that case, what we're gonna come back to you with some additional information isn't a grant proposal for the road, but rather a proposal for a grant program for businesses who have historical buildings that have odd, expensive, extraordinary costs for repairing, improving. And so the road and others, who have older buildings that are just a pain in the neck, but are clearly assets to the downtown because they have historic nature. We're gonna come back to you with a program that the road could, and any other business who has a more historic building, could apply for a grant.
I worry about the historical piece, simply because I remember in the comprehensive plan, or correct me if I'm wrong, they're not grain, but the metal buildings, are they historic? Because I know in the comprehensive plan, the idea was to maybe turn it into a brewery or a market, Saturday night market. So if it's not historical, we can't help them.
So, technically speaking, so we don't actually have any property in the city on a historic register. Like, there's no external definition of what a historical building is in North Plains, except for the building that the lower is in, that last part, oh, yeah, sorry. That building as an old bank actually has gotten on a county list of recognized properties, but there are no historic protected properties in North Plains. And so all of that is to say, part of the recommendation we're gonna bring to you about the program is what we would consider historic or not. And then, and then you get to consider it, banter about it, decide if you like it or not. But what we would want to do is create a definition for you of what would be considered historic under the program. And then that would be able to help those businesses.
Commissioner, on that, could we bring in the North Plains Historical Agency Society? Thank you. Sorry, I know. Mr. Kindle and the other guy. Now, I've talked to a couple people about that, and it came up, so it seemed like a good idea.
Yeah, no.
They could help be an extra. They could help steward that, so maybe we can deal with the grants and I can deal with the historical part.
No,
Good partnership.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then the other thing I wanted to ask the commission to consider is what other types of programs do we want to ask for to look at outside of just tenant improvement for historical and food. So let's, if you can send those to Bill or to the commission, don't send it to everybody, just BCC, so we don't get in trouble. But yes, it is something that we do want to take up as we're going through this process as well. Not just historic, but also if there's other ones. And with that, so okay, so you have approval, you're good. You don't need anything else?
No, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're good. Anything else for good of the Lord before we adjourn? During the North Plains Urban Renewal Agency meeting at 9:16. Well, it was no 8:30, but it was still better.